Well, hello everyone. I have to say it's a pretty exciting day for me. I have been waiting for this for a little bit because I have a very wonderful lady on the show today. And her name is Jeanette Hawkins, and she is going to be sharing a bit of her journey. We'll say more about all of that. I opened my dad's Bible today to Psalms 65. I love to read what he has underlined, circled, starred. And today, in of all things, sort of a very pink color of ink, I don't know where he got that, all those years ago. It's wonderful. I don't know if you can see it. Okay, you can a little. See there? So it says, by terrible things in righteousness wilt thou answer us, O God of our salvation, who art the confidence of all the ends of the earth and of them that are afar off upon the sea. When I think about the sea, I think sometimes about how you're just tossed to and fro in a storm, how you're at the mercy of the sea. But our confidence can be placed well in who God is, a God of justice, a God of power. It goes on to say, by which his strength sets fast the mountains, being girded with power, who stills the noise of the seas and the noise of their waves and the tumult of the people. Only by God is the tumult of the people brought to stillness. What was once a raging storm, peace be still. That is our God. I'm so excited to see how God does bring justice. I've seen it in my own life. And today, we just want to give a lot of love and appreciation to a special woman. And you might remember an episode by Ohio for Freedom, an episode by myself. Both of us have mentioned this precious woman, Jeanette Hawkins. Who is she? Well, she was one of the 3 people that were called blackmailers. And there was a lawsuit that took place, and it all has to do with Marcus and Joni and Daystar. So I'm going to welcome her to the show. And Jeanette, we are so very, very happy to be with you and to see you in person. You are Jeanette Hawkins. Have you heard your name being talked about a little bit?
Yes, and all the digital AI voices and animations. So I think, I thought that was hilarious. But I did want to thank you guys, all the YouTubers, because for so long I thought my story was just going to go down in lies and the way that it was told. And that really takes its toll on someone. It took me to a very, very dark place. And that's why that's one of the reasons I decided to speak out, because I know that there's other people out there that are going through the same thing, that are hurting. And I want them to know that there's freedom. The truth will set you free. And so I want to thank, you, Pastor Ray Everett from Ohio for Freedom. I know that I'm missing some, but thanks to everybody so much for getting behind me.
Wow. Thank you for having the courage to do what you're doing today. We know that there are some reasons that, it's a little precarious for you to speak, but we're going to navigate that legally and for your protection. And I think, why don't we just start with, you need to read something before we get started, and let's let you do that.
Okay, let's get this legal stuff out of the way.
Out of the way.
Out of the way. So no party that was a defendant in the lawsuit and or the Daystar lawsuit or any other person acting on their behalf paid any money or gave any monetary equivalent to any other party that was a plaintiff in any of the lawsuits and or the Daystar lawsuit in connection with the resolution of or in order to resolve any of the lawsuits and Daystar lawsuit.
There you go. Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. All right. So could I ask you something going back? When did you find the Lord? How long have you been a Christian?
That's a great question. So, I found him about 20, I want to say 10, 15 years ago. Um, my brother had become a Christian at 18 and we were raised Catholic. So when my parents found out, it's funny because they thought he had joined a cult. He was just sold out on fire for the Lord, and he tried to convince, or minister to all of us. And at the time we didn't want to hear it, but for a praying brother, um, all of my family members came to know the Lord, and including my mother and father before they passed. And so, yeah, that was a very unique time to go from Catholicism to knowing that you have a direct link to the Lord, that you don't have to go to priest, for your sins. So, yeah, it was a very profound period in my life.
And so, was that Christianity that happened before you ended up working at Daystar?
Yes. So I was a member of a Baptist church for a long time, and some friends introduced me to the charismatic movement, if you will. And so I was baptized in the Holy Spirit, and, was around and went to Assemblies of God churches. So I was introduced to that. I had never heard of Daystar. A friend that was actually a guest on their show is the one who told me they were looking for a director of marketing. So the Lord had advanced me so quickly in my professional career and had given me so much that I wanted there to be a period in time that I could give back to Him. And utilizing the skills that He gave me in that way was my way of giving back. So, in essence, it was a ministry to me too. It was my ministry using those gifts.
Wow. So when you got news that you were hired at Daystar, what did that feel like?
Well, I was excited and nervous because I felt like it was going to be a completely different environment. In a secular setting, you're so limited about what you can't say and can say about Jesus. And it's really hard to minister to people, even though I did. So I was ready for a new era in my life and excited about the environment that I believed I was going to be going into. And boy, was I wrong.
We've heard that from other people that sort of the environment is actually, I think of my good friend Morgan Ferris. What a beautiful, beautiful gal. And she's come forward just saying that it was so stressful. Lisa has said that, having worked closely with Joni. And it's a surprise to all of us because the picture that we see on the screen, and the woman that I ended up talking to the night when I put up my first video are two different people, and it was difficult. But you were excited that you got to be at this place and you can talk about Jesus, and so what was your position that you were offered? And by the way, you came from another secular job where you were making huge money, and you had to take quite the pay cut in order to come to Daystar. Is that correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. And I knew that I would. Part of it was that I was coming to Dallas, which was a different market. And I knew that working for a ministry, they wouldn't be able to pay what mainstream pays. However, that in itself is a story and a point I'd like to get to later. I really did believe that it was going to be a great place to work. And the other thing I saw was I was really looking for a female spiritual mentor at the time. And I really believed that Joni was going to be that to me, just to be able to sit back and watch and see how people respond in complicated times or in times when no one's watching, is what I was hoping for. And, I looked up to her and Marcus so much. And, just wanted to see. Of course, my mother wasn't a Christian, so I didn't have a female role model, spiritual mentor role model. And I really believed that she was going to be that for me. And as it turns out, some of my secular female mentors professionally were better role models to me than unfortunately Joni was.
Wow. And I guess that is quite the position when you begin realizing that. What were you first hired to do, and did you move around in any positions? And how closely did you work with Marcus and Joni?
Sure. So I was hired as a director of marketing, and it was a very, very small marketing department. I want to say there was me and two other people. I had a part-time assistant. She would assist me, and then the other part of the day, she would assist Joni and taking the kids to school, and really more of a personal assistant. And resources were split out like that a lot, but it was very small, and we grew it very, very quickly. We developed a graphics team that had three graphic artists and a webmaster as well. We had a special events team, and Jennifer Falcon, who's the other name that you hear about a lot, helped and headed that little area up. And we had writers, and well, the writers and producers were mostly attached to the show, but I did have a writer that was attached to me that would handle, um, different writing jobs. So yeah, I mean, I grew it into a large department, and we were a team. I looked at all those people as my children. And, were there times that I was intense? Yeah, we had very, very difficult deadlines that we had to meet. And, we interacted with every department there. And my job was to keep everything on track and to make sure that we hit all those deadlines.
I heard from Morgan Ferris this morning. She's so ecstatic. She loved you. And she said she was
Mhm.
one of my favorite people to work for ever. That's
Oh,
how highly that she felt about you. And so when you say that you looked at all of these precious people as family, as your children, and in fact, you kind of had a special relationship with Rachel in many ways.
I did, yes. What I will say is all of the people in Daystar, I mean, their prayer department is filled with precious, precious people. And the people inside, there's a lot of prayer warriors in there. And so Morgan, yes, she was very precious to me. And I really enjoyed having her as a part of my department. She's a gifted graphic artist. So, that was a benefit. And yes, I had a special relationship with Rachel. It's hard for me to see the Rachel that I'm seeing post some of these messages, because she was she was a child. She was still in high school when I worked there, and she had such a precious heart. So I can't, it's hard for me to recognize who this person is that is, putting this stuff out there. I don't even know who that person is. So it's heartbreaking to see and hear that the family is in the predicament that it's in, because, I am in a family of three sisters. We cherish our brother. We would do anything for him. So to see the relationship broken the way it is, and to have her saying some of the things about her niece, I could never do that. That would just break my heart. So I don't know where that's coming from.
In fact, I remember you kind of shared a little precious story about she gave you a gift, like you said that you liked something, and she gave you a gift. And do you think maybe she looked up to you as like a mother figure, just a mentor, someone she could just be herself with? Because, she did kind of have some interesting relationships around the office, but with you, she kind of let her guard down.
Yeah. I would like to think so. And, I like to tell this little story because it just shows, it tells a lot about their personalities. But when I first got there, Jonathan was in a work program that his father was doing. He wanted him to know the different areas of the network. He was working in the graphics department when I was there, but he would come drop off things in my office. And I was in a meeting one time, the door was open, and he peeks in and drops something in my inbox. And somebody says, "You know who that is, right?" And I said, yeah, that's Jonathan. He works in the graphics department. And they said, no, that's Jonathan Lamb. That's Marcus and Joni's only son who will take this place over one day. And I just thought that was so telling of his character, that he was such, and still is, such a humble spirit. And I had no clue. Had somebody not told me, I would not have known who he was. He didn't go around telling people who he was or what he did. Rachel, she was a little feisty one. And she came in and, one day was talking about how I was going to work for her one day and she was going to run the network. And I just thought that was so cute because, I remember being that person who had a lot of determination. I was a strong-willed child. I had a lot of determination. So it didn't strike me as a bad thing, but I think that just tells the difference in their personalities. But I would have liked to think so. She made it very well known that marketing was her field of interest. And so anything I could do to teach her the ropes, I, bent over backwards. And, she later had a little subsidiary and that fell under marketing, and it was her T-shirt business that she had for a while. And she had her own graphic artist. She would, talk to that artist about her ideas of what to put on T-shirts. And so, that was a little department in itself that fell under marketing. So, yeah, I mean, I would have liked to think that I had a unique relationship with her.
Yes, you certainly would have, and you've actually really kind of defended that sweet person that you saw in those early days. But like you say, feisty, she wanted you to know that she was going to be your boss one day, and so she wanted to learn all that she could from you now, but she wanted to grow into that position. And thank you for saying
Right.
that as well about Jonathan. That's such an interesting story that he would just kind of drop something off and you wouldn't even know who he was. The heir to
Yeah.
Daystar, the heir that Marcus Lamb has even named on his deathbed, that would literally be leading Daystar. And now to
Right.
find under Joni's leadership that he's, been let go without funds, and he's just, he's just been cast off. And of course, he's actually feeling free because, in his words, it was a very, very distressing environment to work in. But you had this unique ability to have seen them and this opportunity to see them way back when and the differences that were going on. One thing that has been said to us by whistleblowers from Daystar is there was this competition that they could see between Jonathan and Rachel, in that she wanted actually to lead Daystar one day. Did you ever see anything like that?
I did, and I mean, I never saw a competitive spirit between them. But I did see that Rachel was very, very determined. And I got to tell this because it was just the gesture of Rachel. The little gift that you talk about was she came in my office one time and, we were all about fashion at the time. And she was wearing some earrings that I thought were beautiful. I think they were costume. I'm not sure, but they were little pearl earrings. And I said, Rachel, I love those earrings. And she just took them off and handed them to me. She said, here, take them. I want you to have them. And I tell that just because that was the spirit of her heart. Like she wanted to give me something off of, her own back that she was wearing. And she was very generous that way. But, so that's why I'm having trouble reconciling who she is today. I never saw that they were competitive, but I did see that Rachel was very, very determined. She did, her father thought very highly of her. She's a smart, smart girl, and it was obvious that she did want a role in leading Daystar, but it was always made very clear to us that Jonathan would be the one in charge, that he would be leading Daystar when he was no longer around. So yeah, it's
When
sad
Marcus
to
wasn't
see.
there anymore, that it
Right,
was clear who was going to be the leader, and that would be Jonathan Lamb.
correct.
This humble, young, gentle soul that kind of, flitted around and learned all that he could from what we know. I appreciate what you're saying about Rachel, because people are not all bad or all good. I saw that vulnerability at the NRB this last week when I was at the NRB, and Rachel came up to me and she asked me why I wasn't speaking to her personally, because she could see that I speak to a lot of people, like, about Daystar, but not her. And I saw something in her eyes. It was a vulnerable person, not the nasty things that I've seen those things said and printed, but there was a vulnerability about her that was striking. I would even dare say, in my opinion, I saw fear in her eyes. And I also saw that quite perhaps she's defending to all ends, because she's perhaps trapped. But those are just my thoughts, just my feelings.
Right, right.
As you proceeded and you worked there, the environment working, did you end up working closely with Joni Lamb?
I did. I worked very closely under Marcus and Joni. And there were many times that we were in meetings. I also, oversaw like the projects, her book project, and worked very closely with the publishers. So yeah, it was not unheard of for me to have interaction with Joni on a daily basis.
And
And
yes.
oh, I was just going to say, and that came with some good and bad, because there were times that were, very difficult situations. Her producer, Karen Thompson, was very, very close to her. And I'll give you an example of the difference between secular and, behind the scenes at Daystar. Because Karen was so passionate, we both were passionate about what we did. There were times that we didn't agree on how a project should turn out, or maybe the marketing side. And you would have thought that, in conflict resolution, like it's talked about in the secular realm, you bring both people in the room so that each person gets to tell their side of the story, or gets to tell, have their argument. And Joni would have been that neutral party listening to both. But instead, she liked to keep us apart. She didn't want us really talking to each other. There was never a time that we came together, the three of us, and just had a healthy discussion, because I felt like it was a control thing. The more she could keep people apart and have us believe that the other person was talking about, the other person in an healthy way, the more conflict that there would be and the more control she held. So there were really tough times like that. And I think it happens a lot, unfortunately, with pastors' wives. They have that Jezebel spirit, and it becomes about control. And, they do things like that, which is so unfortunate that, women should be lifting each other up, not causing conflict.
And that's right in line with some things that Morgan has shared as well. Like, one of the things that Joni would do is go into a room and say, "I know everything," when she actually knew nothing. "Tell me everything. I know. I already know. I already know everything." And so,
Yeah.
a really odd way, not authentic, not with full transparency, and not truthful to deal with these kinds of issues.
Yes. Well, and I also got to see the diva part of her, for lack of a better term. I working in mainstream media, had the chance to work alongside and with different celebrity personalities, and I never saw the diva behavior. With Joni, I know that anytime we went into a meeting, her she drank sparkling water. Her water had to be, the top had to be off. The room temperature had to be at a certain temperature. She didn't really like to have a lot of interaction with, the employees. And so there were little things like that I saw that were kind of red flags. And, it unfortunately turned out to I saw a different side of her that was not a healthy side.
Wow. Did people in working in the organization see the same things as you? Obviously, you're all there kind of watching this and being kind of shocked and taken back by diva behavior.
Yeah.
Was there ever comments made to you by others?
I think that really, in the day-to-day details, most people don't see that because they don't really see her. She comes
You were
in for the
close to
show.
her.
Yes. And so, I mean, I think producers that worked with her probably saw, get to see that side of her. I will tell you that for me, I didn't want to be, she did have an inner circle and it was very well known. One of the first things I said to Joni was that I was there to do a job. I wasn't there to be anyone's friend. Because that was the mindset in, the secular mentality, that I didn't, and I said that because I saw the political side. I saw how people would, some of the things they would do and say to stay on our good side. I didn't want that. It was better for me to remain professional than to become friends. I never saw myself as one of Joni's friends. I saw her as she was my boss. I respected her, but I was there to do a job. And so I kept myself at arm's length as much as I could from her inner circle because I didn't want to be a part of any of the drama or, that political side that you saw.
Right. And her friends, are you talking back then? I mean, she's known Anna Kendall forever. And her best friend, I don't know her name, but she's always there. They're always so encouraging to Joni. It seems like if Joni were to say, I'm going to go on a helicopter today, and one of the pieces of the helicopter, that thing that whips around, what's that? That one piece is missing, they would be like, "Oh, that's so exciting. That would be great. Right. Why don't you just do it? Doesn't matter how dangerous it is. Doesn't matter how it doesn't make sense to do that, But right. Like these ladies are for some reason. I mean, they are very tight. Is it the same group?
She had a couple others, and what I said to her in that meeting was because I wasn't there to be her friend, I was not a yes man. I was never gonna tell her what I thought she wanted me to say. I was gonna tell her the truth because I feel like people need that, and celebrities, they in the secular realm, they do want to surround themselves with that because they know how valuable their reputation is and their image. So to have people saying yes to them all the time serves no benefit to them. They prefer to hear,
sure.
What the public is saying. So yeah, I mean, and I wasn't going to tell her the truth disrespectfully. I would always tell her the truth in, what I feel like was going to most benefit her professional image. One of my duties was PR, so we had to make sure that and her public image was untainted. And she Karen, her producer, was one of the people in her inner circle, and I think Karen was pretty honest. But oddly enough, the people who told her what she didn't want to hear and who were the most honest were labeled as rebels. So a lot of those, I would say that all of those people are no longer there. And there's a reason for that because we were seen as misfits. We were seen as rebels. We were labeled as, you know, people who were fighting the system. And in reality, we wanted what was best for her.
Yes. And this is so congruent with things that other people have said. And it's so shocking, really, because I can sense from you that you wanted the best for her. Like you would have given the right advice at the right time. And can you ever recall a time, would she get angry? Did you ever see her angry?
Yes, I did see her angry at different times. I was never the wrath of that anger until the last conversation I had with her when I submitted my resignation. But I did see a side of her that was not healthy that you see, and I think people had the privilege to hear that in Jonathan's recordings because had I said something and during that time We weren't believed when, we left. Nobody was going to believe anything that we had to say or that I had to say. And for people to get to see the real Joni Lamb, in those recordings and hear what she could be like if you crossed her, that's important because that's a rare insight into what she can be like in the other side. Because, of course, on air, she's only going to let you see one side. In public, you're only going to see, the sweet side of Joni. But yes, I did get to see her angry side. I was not ever, I don't believe, a part of the person who took that wrath on.
In Proverbs, it speaks about those friends that are really valuable, who actually will tell you the truth, who do mean for your best, but over and over and over. And this is what I'm seeing playing out in her life right now, is it doesn't seem to matter that the world is basically saying this is a really bad idea, for you to have married Doug. This is a bad idea for you to have somebody that's an alleged predator on air hosting every day. I am trying to understand the psyche of someone who has made these kinds of decisions that are so opposite to what maybe good governance would do. But she
Right.
it's like a doubling down. And I don't know if that's pride. I guess I would love to hear from you. Did you see a prideful side or some of these characteristics that would make someone do illogical things?
Not to that point. I felt like when Marcus was around, she had a better head on her shoulders. Now she's making decisions that, first of all, I can't imagine any PR person would allow to happen. And, it was tough because many of the women that you see surrounding her now, Daystar is unfortunately run with a spirit of fear, and they are on her payroll, and people need to remember that their jobs are at stake. So I think they tread very carefully on what I can and can't say. So, even Steve Wilhite, who you guys refer to as Deacon Ballcap, which I think is funny, he's on her payroll. So of course he's going to come to her defense. He always was one of the people that told her what she wanted to hear. And I really think those people are doing her a disservice.
Oh, they
I know
sure
with
are.
me,
How many guys want to go on for Joni and call somebody out, lie about someone like myself? They've directly lied about my involvement with Jonathan and Susie, my coercion, and wants to call another broadcaster, podcaster, a clickbait cockroach. This guy and her, like, they are just in it together. And that's interesting that you had this perspective from so many years ago.
yes. And, Steve was very feared, which is not something I would be proud of, but he was very feared, probably still is. And I think that's unfortunate because in a Christian environment, I don't believe anyone should be feared. I feel like, people should enjoy their jobs. And I think the reason why employees are still staying in there is because they don't know any other job. They don't know what the secular realm has to offer. I enjoyed my time working in a secular environment than I did working at Daystar. And I think that's very telling. And I think that's really, really sad. That many of my secular bosses were more real, more warm in their personality. Would If I made a mistake, they would have a one-on-one conversation, and it was, they would tell me about it in a loving way. And that's what I look to. I look to my family as, the people who tell me when I've stepped out of line, and it's hard to hear, of course, but they're going to keep you true to yourself. And in Joni's case, because there's not those people in the workplace, you would have thought that she would listen to her family when they were telling her they saw red flags in her behavior. And unfortunately, we see from Jonathan's recordings that she couldn't even take that healthy insight from her family, and not just healthy, but biblical insight, because what Jonathan was saying was he was holding her to biblical principles that she held other people. I think that was the hardest thing, is that I was divorced, and some of the things Jonathan was saying were the very things that she would tell me at one point about, my marriage, because she always tried to get me to reconcile with my ex-husband, who was very abusive, mentally and, physically abusive, not to the point where others have experienced, but, I got pushed and, had my shoulder dislocated, and I understand what she was trying to do in the reconciliation, because she didn't believe in divorce at the time, which I think is odd because now she does, and she thinks that there's, I don't agree with her biblical principles and what she's saying now. And I think Jonathan was only trying to help his mother that way, because he knew that in an international ministry, you have to be careful about the way you look at divorce.
It appears that from everyone I've ever spoken to that knew her on the other side, and from everything I've ever known or seen, when Joni wants what she wants, anything that stands in her way, including someone's advice or someone's opinion, is not welcome. She wants,
Right.
six of those. The kids and the siblings sat in a room and said to her before she was married. They had 1 minute flat basically before she headed off to New York to be with Doug. They had 1 minute flat to kind of say, this and such has happened. And she just said, fear, 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 fear. She did not want to hear it. And, as we're looking at the outfall, it's quite a disaster, actually. And she does not appear that she wanted to receive good counsel or to listen to godly counsel. And Jeanette, just you are absolutely godly counsel. You were working there. Did you ever pray as you would see some of the different things going on? Would you be in prayer for what was happening and that God would give you wisdom? Because some of this stuff was disturbing to you.
Yes, close to the end there, especially myself and Jennifer Falcon, and one of the pastors, Pastor Norman, we would get together at Jennifer's house and we would have a time of prayer, just the three of us for Daystar and the things that we saw going on. There was times that I would fast about, how to handle different situations and seek the Lord for wisdom. And my family would, we would all come together and pray. They were always in prayer because they saw me so distressed about things that were going on. So, absolutely. The thing that really bothered me is the prayer sessions that I had with Jennifer Falcon as a friend and Pastor Norman as a friend were turned on us, and what it was made to seem like it was a bad thing, and it was, just innocent time of going to the Word, God's Word. Pastor Norman just, he knew God's Word. He knew he could, quote scriptures like no one I'd ever known. And so, we would turn to him for wisdom. So yeah, it's unfortunate that some of those things were turned against me.
That's so interesting. Turned against you. Are you saying by Joni that she
Yes.
threatened because, oh, you're all getting together praying for us to be, find discernment or whatever, and that was threatening to her?
It was turned. It was more that the relationship was ungodly. That the relationship that I was having with Pastor Norman was ungodly. And to anybody who knows this man, they would see that that's the most ridiculous thing ever, because he loved his wife. He worked so hard to get his wife in. She was in another country. I believe it was Africa at the time, but he was fighting so hard to get his wife and children in. And, so yeah, that was really hard to hear. It was like a stab in the heart. But
So
yeah, it was.
ungodly, that term actually used? You're like, were you pulled aside? Were you pulled in the office? Let's have a chat about this.
No, it was not. It was done after I left. Things that people were telling me, some of the things that were being said on the inside, and so that's what really. But no, she never pulled me aside and had any conversations with me. one-on-one, which was also not a good thing, because I know that I would see her at times having conversations with a graphic artist male that worked for me. And while I know that she was trying to gather insight, that's a conversation that I felt like should have happened between me and her. And sometimes I felt like she was having those conversations. She would be whispering in his ear at a Daystar dinner, for instance, and they would be looking at me. She wanted it known that they were having a discussion about me, and I just thought that was so unhealthy. That's such a controlling spirit, if you will, because if there were any conversations that took place, that should have happened between she and I. So, yeah.
Did you were there then for quite a few years? Did you ever see a guest, Doug Weiss, come onto the set?
Yes, and unfortunately, and I hate to say this, but Doug, even amongst the staff, was thought as somebody that was a little creepy. Um, he, he, Women felt very uncomfortable around Doug when he would come around as a guest, because it wasn't, it was not unlike him he would give a woman, up and down view, and he was a sex doctor. That's how we saw him. He was the former sex addict that had sex shows, and even in the women's conference, most of his segments were sex based. His language was a little bit too strong, I think, for a Christian environment. Uh, actually, for a secular environment, I would never have had some of the conversations and said some of the things that he says. And is well known for in public. Those are very uncomfortable conversations, which I'm sure is why he did it. But there's healthy ways and godly ways that I think you can have those conversations. But yeah, everybody knew his laugh, and quite frankly, Joni, that people made fun of his laugh, and I hate to say that, but and Joni was one of those people, and so now she, and that's why
Did she
Shannon
make fun of
Kelly
his
told,
laugh?
yes,
She
and
did?
yes, I mean, just that,
The
how
laugh,
boisterous.
the prophetic laugh that Shannon Kelly heard in a dream?
Exactly. Exactly. And so it was well known that, that he was just an odd character, and Joni would have part of those conversations. So I understand that, she looks at him as her husband. I hope that she was honest with him, because we did, it was, being around him was uncomfortable. And I think to this day, I've heard from, other people who've been around him to date, just like months ago. And he still gives that. People who have a discerning spirit, I think, are more likely to feel it and to see it. And there are people that have said that it's uncomfortable. Being around him is a little uncomfortable. And
I've
it's mostly
heard,
women.
yes, yeah. The other thing, I just have to ask this, I didn't, prepare you for this at all, but when you look at video, when numerous people have remarked this, so Marcus and Joni are sitting there interviewing Doug, there is a look in Joni's face, like she is just smiling, just very enamored, with
Yeah,
Doug. And of course, he was, younger, thinner, and could speak without slurring. And so she was, looking at him very longingly. Like that's what it looks like. Did you
right.
ever, was there ever any remarks you can remember that people had anything to say about that, or?
Well, it's interesting because Marcus and Joni had a signal, and her producer, Karen, told us about that, or told me about this as well. And I mean, it was pretty well known that if he was saying something she wasn't comfortable, or if she had something to say and she needed to interrupt, she would grab his hand or grab his arm. And you will see that it's something that's always stayed with me, because I can see that now in conversations. Doug's known as a person who really says more than he should. If I was her and married to him, I would be walking on eggshells all the time because he says things that he probably shouldn't. And Marcus was very disciplined. He was very private, so he was very aware of what he was saying. But Doug's like a loose cannon. You never know what's going to come out of his mouth. So I think for her, that's a scary thing, and it should be.
She looks
yes,
terrified, to be honest.
and
You can see it
if you
now
watch,
every day.
yeah, you can watch her she'll interrupt him right as he's saying something that he really shouldn't. But his behavior, to answer your question, was never not as you see it today. I don't know what is going on, but people should be concerned. He looks swollen. His voice is slurred, and it may be a something medically that's going on that none of us know about, and that's okay. But yeah, it is disconcerting to see that side of him for sure.
And someone else, and yeah, JT, you're just putting up the would this be the thing you're talking about, this little hand grab right here? Like,
Yes,
okay, you've said enough.
exactly.
I'm going to step in.
I mean, there's times, I think it's that specific show. It's a clip from your show a couple of days ago where the look on her face says it all. I mean, she looks disgusted by what he's saying. So, yeah.
She's in quite a position, and she can't even hide it, actually. It's so interesting. Another part of this is you were in Arnold Torres, for instance. He worked there at the same time. What was it like working around Arnold?
Arnold was a nice guy. Everybody loved Arnold. He was seen as somebody genuine. Now, he could have been the one person having honest conversations with Marcus and Joni behind the scenes, although he is a yes man. He is one of those, he would have made a great politician because he does tell you exactly what you want to hear. Hopefully he was having conversations that they needed to hear behind the scenes. But Arnold's a very, very nice guy. I think sometimes in the position he holds, that's not something that those are conversations. You have to have the tough conversations. And there were times that Arnold and I had tough conversations about things. And but he was always seen as the one that had the steady head, the steady mind. And it's hard to hear him having those conversations with Jonathan because that's not even the Arnold I know, never professionally in the workplace. So to hear him, belittling Jonathan in the way that he has done, first of all, is very disrespectful. And Jonathan didn't answer to him. Jonathan answered to his mom. So Jonathan, in the way that Arnold was speaking to him, it would have been right for him to leave the room because for us to have spoken to Marcus or Joni that way would have completely been disrespectful. And Joni herself would not have taken that conversation. So in the position that Jonathan was in as vice president, absolutely, he should have never been spoken to that way. So, and Arnold is not one to be, he shouldn't be one to be speaking out that way because Arnold has some things that he should be concerned about as well. He knows some behavior that he took part in that is ungodly, immoral, and there were things that he did that was not things that are practiced in a Christian environment, I will say. And I just will leave it at that.
Yeah, fair enough. And when you hear him in these, see, I don't know, I don't have any context of Arnold. So when I hear, the only thing I think is, what a horrible man to be speaking to Jonathan that way, to be participating with Joni and Jimmy Evans' assault, spiritual abuse against Jonathan. So my only context is that is one nasty man, a couple of them, I would say, he sounded more like a background guy, and he was probably going, why am I in this room? You got the feeling he might not even want to be there. But then
Exactly.
there's a couple of these clips that show that he was fully the yes man. If Joni
Right.
says it, we're going with Joni's idea of how this should go down. It's
Right.
interesting to me that not one of those, those two board members or the lawyer or Jimmy Evans could have at some point kind of gone, wait a flipping second. This young
Exactly.
man is talking about nothing but righteous
Exactly.
ideas, judgment, biblical concepts, what the
Right.
Bible has to say. And we are just dogging on him like a pack of wolves.
Right.
And Arnold Torres did nothing to
Right.
stand up to what was evil in this situation. So that's our sort of understanding of him. So to hear that he's sort of the one that you once maybe could have gone to, and also that maybe there's been in his past, that's all just, gives us some sort of reference point.
Yes. And also to know that all of this stemmed from one conversation Jonathan had with his mother, and that was that he wasn't comfortable. He and Susie were not comfortable going on air, uh, reading, things that they felt were not true or that went against their beliefs, biblical beliefs, is to me what's the craziest. Because had Joni just let this happen organically, and had she handled even the SA allegations differently, I think that we wouldn't, be even seeing ourselves here in the place that we are today. And I think that's the thing that most of the people, the former employees that used to work there, are having the hardest time reconciling is. Um, I could never imagine, because I believe that Daystar is not a church. I believe that it is a family business. But to have the one person that I believe that would have run Daystar ethically and with a pure heart is Jonathan. And I think his father knew that. And it's why his father said what he did in his final days, because he knew that Jonathan, he didn't have to have all the knowledge. And that's what bugs me about the conversation is they keep saying, well, we have 40 years of knowledge. David, when he was anointed as king, was a young boy. And he was not brought up in a royal household like even the royals of today are. The Lord was going to equip him and did equip him with everything he needed to run a kingdom. And Joni should have seen that, and she's wise enough to know that. So that really makes me angry to hear that, we have all this experience. The Lord never calls who he doesn't equipped. So those words should have never been spoken. I think, quite frankly, Jonathan could go in today and run Daystar with a pure heart and with the integrity that's necessary to do that.
Oh my gosh, if Jonathan stepped in today, you'd have all the broadcasters coming back. I bet Joyce
Yeah.
Meyer would be back. I would be back. All of us would be back. And
Yes.
it would be because we could trust the integrity of Daystar, and all of these other broadcasters would feel the same. But it's interesting that it became about reading. Did you ever see Joni and Marcus trying to tell someone what they could or couldn't say on camera, and maybe trying to force them to read? Or was there any of this kind of controlling behavior that you ever witnessed?
No, if anything, it was the other way around, because her producer would stop her, or because it wasn't the right thing to say on the show, or I would say, that's not probably a great comment to make on the PR side. So everything was closely watched, but it was usually from the people that were hired to do that, to make sure that everything was kept up, on the utmost of with the utmost of integrity. So no, and quite frankly, had I been told you can't do or say this, and I knew that it was not biblical, that's when I would have left and did leave, because I was being told to, keep things quiet, or things were not being done in a biblical. That's the only reason I would leave any Christian environment. So, yeah.
Well, let's get into a bit of the story then. Of why you did leave. I'd just like to ask you: were NDAs a thing when you were there? Did everyone have to sign an NDA to work at Daystar?
No, to my understanding, we signed an employee handbook, and that was just for them to have in their files to acknowledge that we all read and would comply with everything in the handbook. No non-disclosures were ever signed. And if you listen to Arnold, he contradicts himself because in the meetings, they all say, well, this is something they're telling Jonathan and signing and getting him to sign the NDA. This is something that's never been done with employees. This is the first time we're doing it. So either they were lying in that meeting, or they were lying to the people on the inside saying that it had been done.
Right, because then they wanted all employees now, it's my understanding, or have all signed these NDAs, is what you're saying. They were making like, oh yeah, we've always done this. Or
correct. And honestly, Laura-Lynn, if you think about it, why on earth would any Christian organization want people to sign an NDA? Because professionally in the secular realms, NDAs are only put in place to protect trade secrets, or strategic things that you're doing within the industry that they don't want their competitors to get their hands on. So what could you possibly have to not disclose or sign a non-compete when you're talking about Jesus in the Bible? And I know that that's one of the things that people are fighting for the most right now. I would jump on that bandwagon in a heartbeat, because I think that's the craziest thing, that he didn't have his disciples sign NDAs. There's absolutely no reason why a church should have people signing non-disclosures or non-competes.
right, there was a funny picture at the Restore conference. One of the presenters, I think his name was Lance, but he had Jesus getting all the disciples signing the NDAs, and it brought a ruckus applause and laughter because what
Yeah.
I think you have people sign these when you're afraid. You're afraid
Right.
that people will talk about what you've done, and then why are you? Why are you
Exactly.
afraid of that?
And I will tell you the reason why celebrities in mainstream have their employees sign NDAs, which is the only thing that I can, kind of correlate, is that they would not disclose secrets. Well, I mean, if you're an international godly minister and you're following the word of God in your behavior, then again, what would you have to hide? Why would you need people to sign NDAs if you have nothing to hide?
100%. I absolutely agree. And so some parts of your story, I'd like to get into the parts where, you've informed me already, you can't talk about it. But publicly, of public record is basically, I do have a share there. I hope you can see that, JT. This appears to be I'll go right to the top here. Jeanette Hawkins, you were the plaintiff versus Marcus Lamb, Word of God Fellowship. And do you recognize, can we put this up on the screen here? There, do you recognize this, Jeanette? This is what you were involved with. And
right.
And I'm going to kind of go down to, in conjunction with making sure that lawyers are understanding what we're presenting today, I'm going to go to this Article 14 or Paragraph 14. And I'm going to read a little bit. And this is all public. This is public knowledge. Through aggressive and relentless appeals to its viewers for financial donations and sales of airtime, Daystar grew rapidly. As of June 30th, 2005, Daystar had net assets of approximately $107 million. And on or about June 13th, 2005, plaintiff Jeanette Hawkins was hired by defendant to serve as its director of marketing. In the process of applying for the job, the plaintiff was interviewed by the defendant, Marcus D. Lamb, and by Janice Smith. We know now that Marcus D. Lamb and Janice Smith were actively in an affair at that time, which I'm assuming when you went and applied for your job, you did
Yes.
not know that.
No, and I will say, Janice was my direct supervisor when she was there. She was my boss. And so when I was interviewed, I say it was the Holy Spirit that prompted me to ask that question, because I just wanted to make sure. I had heard and always seen that, some of these televangelists, the PTL thing, that they just aren't who they say they are. They don't walk the talk that they preach. And so for me, I just really wanted to make sure that I was going to be, because it's the main reason that I went into, followed that path, because I could have stayed in the secular realm, was that it was going to be a godly environment, and that they truly believed the word of God and they behaved accordingly. And that was really
And
important.
that's why it says, that basically 1 Thessalonians 5:12 was exactly quoted. And we beseech you, brethren, to know them which labor among you and are over you in the Lord and admonish you. This was actually, it was in an employment brochure, which
Right.
led to the excitement you had to be working. Like, you wanted to make sure, because
Right.
there's been so many scandals. I don't want to be part of that.
Right.
Okay, your life, right? Accordingly, plaintiff asked both defendant Marcus D. Lamb and Janice Smith about the moral standards with which Daystar was managed and the moral climate of the workplace. This was important to you because of your Christian walk, what you had given up, moving to Dallas, and you were now at this amazing job. Both defendant Marcus D. Lamb and Janice Smith replied and represented to plaintiff that Daystar was operated in conformity to the highest standards of Christian behavior, making specific reference to chastity, modesty, and purity. And that conformity to those standards was required of all employees.
Right.
Written. I don't want to stop you if you want to say anything. I just want to make sure that.
No,
Yeah.
I was just going to say, for me, the reason that I'm even talking, I don't do social media. You won't really find me in social media. So there is another Jeanette Hawkins that I think people reach out to, poor thing, that lives in California. That's not me. I don't do social media. And I don't like the limelight. I always preferred, Marcus and Joni would always try to get me on camera, and I just always preferred to be behind the scenes. And so for me, even talking to you, I don't like pictures taken. I just don't like attention. So for me, going away, I completely moved to another city. I just was going to disappear, and I did. And for 10 years, the whole thing just really haunted me, and it took me to a very, very dark place. And that's one of the reasons that I was okay in speaking out, because I know there's people going through the same thing. Either they're fearful, or they just don't want to say anything. But there's a reason why the Bible says the truth will set you free, because for so long lies were told about me. It was a hard time. Me and the other two girls went through a very dark time because we couldn't talk about it. We couldn't set the record straight. And that's where, I thank you guys for being our voice and setting the record straight, because it's a tactic that is used many times. Extortion, blackmail. When you're coming out with the truth, it's a tactic that many of these ministries use to say that they were being blackmailed or extorted, because then it leaves people to question, okay, these really are bad people. They're trying to get money for this. No, that's not the truth. Jonathan has nothing to gain. It's not the truth about him. It wasn't the truth about us. Quite frankly, the attorney that was representing us at the time, He is has a flawless reputation. He is a prestigious attorney, and he would have lost his law license or risked losing his law license had that happened. I would be in jail. That's a felony.
If you were a
So
blackmailer, right.
exactly. And so, you know, they've never gone on record. Nobody's ever gone on record to set the record straight except for you guys. And I thank you. I will always be so grateful for you guys because my family can attest that it was the darkest time in my life. And it was because I was angry at God. I had a crisis of faith because I kept saying, Lord, how can you let these untruths be told about somebody who just wanted to tell the truth? And, you know, I went through a time where I was very angry at God. And had it not been for my family held in their Christian beliefs to hold me accountable and remind me daily of God's love, I probably would have walked away completely. Um, I still have trouble going to a church because the first questions I ask is, you know, are they in it for the money? Are they really out to save souls for Christ? Who sits on their board? Who's holding them accountable? And these are questions that people should ask because there are so many false prophets out there, and they're very good at manipulating God's word to say what they want you to hear. And you know, I think it's important that I went to the conference, the women's conference that that was in Arizona, and I think it was the first time I'd ever gone through a healing process. And there was a time, because you were there too, Laura-Lynn, that you could hear wailing. Just the entire sanctuary was quiet, and you could hear
Yes.
wailing from the depths of women's soul. And that's because women finally were being healed from all the spiritual abuse and um, the essay that they had, you know, endured during their times at a ministry, which I think is like one of the saddest things that you could ever hear. But even for myself, that was the first time that I had gone through healing, and it was I came back a changed person because I really, you know, all that depression and oppression that I was held under for those years was finally I was being set free. So I will
In
always
in
be thankful.
fact, you know, it's known that you literally wanted to take your life. You didn't know how to recover from what just happened to you.
No, no, and it's really hard for me to talk about that without getting emotional. Um, I was taken to, you know, the depths of hell because I I kept saying, Lord, if this if this is you and this really is your kingdom, then why won't you bring all that to light? And it's still stuff that I struggle with. I don't understand, and you know, it's not till I get to heaven that the Lord will disclose that. But it was a very tough time for me because, you know, to be angry at God, nobody wants to be there, and to question what goes on in houses of worship is probably the toughest thing that anybody could come face to face with. And I know even people on YouTube that are hearing day after day the things that are going on behind the scenes in some of these ministries is disheartening. And I know that they may be wanting to take their own lives because of the situation that they're in, because they start to question, is anything real? Is any of this real? That's where I was, and I don't want anybody to suffer with that. So it's one of the main reasons that I wanted to speak out, is because, you know, there is hope, and the Lord has brought me through so much, and He has brought me through those dark days. But if there's anybody out there going through the same thing, we understand, and there is a group of people that want to be here for you.
You are such an extremely beautiful person. And I actually remember Dr.
Thank you.
Phil and this interview. I
Yeah.
actually remember this time, because, it was kind of everywhere, a little bit, salacious, and people were blackmailing. Marcus and Joni were being blackmailed.
Well,
Um,
and to even things being said about you professionally, there were jobs that I missed out on because, first of all, to have that you're an extorter, who wants to be, professionally attached to that? So
yeah.
I
That would
lost
scare away
everything.
any employer pretty much the rest of your life. They Google your name, perhaps
Yeah,
some things pop up. In
right,
spite of it being a long time away, the internet is kind of forever these days. And
right.
so, what happened to you in, you know, um, I'm cognizant right now that there could be people watching that don't know the whole backstory. And if I just read a little bit more of what's already in the public record so that we
Mhm.
understand, and I can even do Cole's notes on it, but would that be all right with you? Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. When defendant Marcus D. Lamb, so that now we're at 21 of your submission, and when defendant Marcus D. Lamb and Janice Smith made these representations to plaintiff, they were themselves. So they made this representation in the interview that everything is okay. They were themselves in the midst of an illicit sexual affair, which at that point had been ongoing for approximately 5 years. They did not disclose this fact to the plaintiff. So even though it was, ironically, the power of the Holy Spirit would have been there, just, you in your heart for the Lord, you wanted to make sure and double sure that you're in the right place. I don't know if I should read much more except to explain that there came a time after you had been working there, and I seem to remember about 2 years or something like that.
I was
Um,
there 3 years.
you were there 3 years. And
Yes.
so there came a time towards the end there where you were informed, or it came to you, from what I understand, from what I have learned, not via your words, but everything that we've studied, that there was somebody working there who basically gave you the emails contained information suggesting that Joni Lamb may already, oh, this wasn't what I meant to write, but suggesting that Joni Lamb may already knew of the affair before it was discovered by the plaintiff.
Right.
Fascinating. And
Well, and I can't, I stand behind the truth of my pleading. So everything you have there, I stand behind
mm,
because it is all truth. Although
but
there
you
are,
can't remark on
you
it.
know, right, the details.
Exactly.
Correct.
And we're going to respect that. So this is in public record. After plaintiff and Mr. Brondo spoke with Bill Trammell, Joni Lamb insisted that Janice Smith leave Daystar immediately. Daystar hastily agreed to purchase her home. So I think I've gone too far, because basically you were shown emails and I'm not going to ask you to respond to this at all. And if I've got it wrong, then I know Ohio for Freedom will set it straight. But I think you were shown emails by an employee that was literally leaving, and in those emails had the evidence of this affair. And so, not much more to say except that this was, you felt that you had to. In the kindest way, I have to tell you that if you were my employee and you found emails that my husband was having an affair and you reported it to me, I would be grateful.
Well, the same thing happened to me, which is why it was so important for Joni to know, because I was quite frankly told by others to give it to Marcus and not say anything to Joni. And as a woman, that's not something, and as a believer in Christ, that's not something that I would have done. I was fortunate to have had somebody come to another woman one on one and told me about the infidelity that was occurring in my marriage, and I will forever be grateful to her because I had no clue. And so, as another woman, I thought Joni needed to hear the truth, and had
That's
that
so
chance.
interesting that you had that experience. You actually felt, I'm guessing, totally sick for Joni in empathy for her.
Yes, it
Um,
broke my heart.
you had been through this.
Right.
So it's important for us, because I don't want you to say anything that you're not allowed to, but it's all here. It's all here in public record. So, but you were doing the kindest, most righteous thing to expose this, and in actuality, for the protection of Joni, to bring this to an end.
Right.
You would think that she would be grateful for the rest of her life for what you've done. But it does appear, if I move forward, that you didn't leave at that point, but that you were being asked, and you stand by all your statements. So I'm just going to say you were being asked to sort of keep the facade going, because Joni had a book that was coming out. And Joni didn't want the whole world knowing that Marcus has been having an affair. I mean, that could affect her book sales. Do you think I'm representing this right or wrong? Are you able to
No,
That's
you're representing it like spot on.
Yeah. And so, according to what I've been able to ascertain from the public record, that there was an expectation that you also would be a part of a cover-up of this affair, so that you would, you would also have to perhaps say things that were dishonest, untrue, but you would come there because you were a woman of righteousness and you weren't about to lie. And therefore, because you could not lie, as Joni Lamb was wanting you to misrepresent facts, or, say it's this or that. And, we've had numerous whistleblowers on here, including, speaking with Susie and Jonathan about Joni's ease of lying. Joni lies about the smallest things, and that's the sadness of it. And I'm saying this right now. Joni will have a meeting with Susie and come back and say that she was getting her nails done because she just doesn't, Lord knows why she couldn't just be having a meeting with Susie, but she had to say, because she didn't want the jealousy to happen. So different whistleblowers have explained this ease. Joni seems to have been completely dishonest about the things that took place at the beach house. There's just so many different things. She was dishonest to me. She told me the night that she called me that the man that essayed Susie was a nice man. And do I wish I had recorded that conversation? Yes, I do.
Right.
But, I just wasn't savvy enough by that time, at that time.
Right. Well, and I think also what kind of gets shuffled under the rug when even the secular media covered this is my main priority when I went there, because I knew that it was an international ministry that was televised, is that donor funds be utilized wisely. And all I will say is that the reason why it's important that people ask questions is it's very easy for funds to get the lines to be blurred, and any funds that are paid out as hush money, people should ask, where's that money coming from? Or funds that are utilized to buy these multi-million-dollar homes and lavish lifestyles, where's that money coming from? I think donors need to ask questions, and it's so important. But that was one of the most important things for me as a believer working there, and even just being a part of any church, are people being wise stewards of godly funds, because they're giving for a reason. They want people's lives and souls to be changed. And
Amen.
anything,
By the message of Jesus Christ, not to
exactly,
be
exactly,
paying any kind of hush money. Or Candy
right.
Shand, who reports regularly, and everyone should follow her on X.
I love.
Candy Shand has alluded to some of these very interesting. She says she has the receipts,
Right.
but interesting things that she has to say about hush money and whatnot. I encourage everyone to make sure you can find Candy Shand, because she's a barrel of fun, let me tell you, in real life, and she's also a huge vault of
And
information.
she's smart. She's a smart woman. I
So
love
smart.
Candy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
here she is, JT. I do have a share. I just at Candy Shand 11. Let's just give her a shout out because she is relentless. I love her. Here it is. Yeah, at Candy Shand 11. So the interesting thing then, and if I haven't missed anything, and I'm trying to be so careful. I mean, you before God, you could not maintain any more lies. You were in
Right.
shock about what had come to light. You were in shock about your experience working there, and you gave your resignation that
Right.
you'd come to the end, and you did have what you called a final conversation with her, and I don't know if that is protected or not.
All I will say is that I made it clear that they would never hear anything of me or from me again, and that I would just go on and live my happy life, and you know, I was going to go back to my secular roots. And unfortunately, even that, and I can talk about this, I'll give you an example of how that was affected. It was just like 3 years ago that I had applied as director of marketing at a PBS station in San Antonio. And the interview went well. The general manager walked me around, introduced me to people. That's usually a sign that everything is going well. So I was excited, and it was just he said, just like an after comment. Oh, let me bring you in so you can meet our director of operations, who actually falls under the general manager. And I said, sure, I'd love to. So I came in a couple days later and met with him. I had already done a proposal of the changes I would make in the first 90 days of my employment. They were very happy about that. And he said, I know you used to work for Daystar, and I'd like to make a phone call and have a conversation. What do you think they would say about you? And I said, I'd like to think that they would say I was a professional, that I had a great work ethic, and that I operated under integrity. And quite frankly, I was only there out of a 20-year broadcast career, so I find it interesting that you would specifically want to call them. But yeah, if it makes you feel at ease, have that conversation. And it wasn't a day later that I was called back and told, we're going to have to pass. We hired somebody. We're going with somebody that comes from another PBS station. And so it was disappointing, obviously, but it did leave me questioning what was said in that conversation.
Right? If you had
Because the
had a
gentleman,
glowing
right,
report.
and the gentleman specifically told me that he knew Arnold Torres personally, and that Daystar was a client. So my guess is he would have had a conversation with Arnold, and yeah, it was very disappointing to say the least.
Wow. And so, what ends up happening then is you feel in your life that you're not getting, um, potential jobs, and you had kind of said, we're gonna just leave this then. I just cannot continue with the nonsense, the cover up, the lies, buying your own book, and becoming a New York bestseller and all that. So that's what we've
And I,
discussed. Yeah.
I think when people talk about my depression, like some people have questioned, I can't believe that took her to a point of depression. You have to understand that everything was taken from me. friends, my job, because I looked at Daystar as a ministry. My ministry was gone.
And a
Um,
family.
Right. And I couldn't speak to anybody. I had to keep it inside, which isn't healthy in itself, but also to have it affect your livelihood because I was blacklisted. You know, there are some business interactions that happen on a daily basis with secular companies. So the company that I had once worked for years, like I was with them for, I would say, at least 8 years, and that who I planned to go back on, they had, it was clear to me that I had been blacklisted. So that I couldn't even go back into television or anything around that realm because I knew what was being said.
And did you see Dr. Phil having them on?
I did. A friend brought it to my attention, and it was disappointing because Dr. Phil usually has both parties on because his goal is to reconcile the and bring a conclusion to the issue at hand. And in that show, I was really disappointed because I didn't feel like that was the goal there. We were never asked to be on, and the story was just being heard from one side. And it's not a secret that Dr. Phil, he films his show out of the TBN studios. He does have a relationship with Christian entities, but just as a psychologist, and being the professional he was, I was very, very disappointed that he didn't have a different show.
Yes, because in actual fact, you were, I guess if we go in a timeline, you at some point decided that you needed to take action for yourself, that something very wrong had occurred. Are you able to share what led you to having to take that action?
I think so. It was after my Daystar employment, so it has nothing to do with the lawsuit. But all I will say is that friends that I had brought, friends and companies from the secular realm that I had professional dealings with, that had were helping me do some things within Daystar and handling different Daystar projects. When they were called, they were told a story that was not true, and they wanted to touch base as to why I all of a sudden wasn't there and let me know what was being said. So, it's unfortunate that that's what it came to, and that's when I decided, that is what's being said will affect my professional relationships and employment, and it is something that I need to take action against. So, unfortunately, that's the reason I went along the path that I went.
Right. Everything had gone. People were speaking badly of you in spite of that you had
Mhm.
had every good intention. And I say this woman to woman, you
Mhm.
acted with integrity upon learning the worst news that any woman could ever receive, that her husband was having an affair on her. You didn't hide it. You didn't cover up. You didn't be a coward.
Mhm.
You felt that in honor of Joni Lamb, you needed to disclose this, come what may, and
Mhm.
you did it. And
Right.
after that, the shock of all shocks is, and I'm not certain that you can really talk about this, but to me, when I'm looking at this situation, I'll speak about myself. The shock of all shocks to me is that Joni doesn't want to expose this so that there's at least some honesty. She actually then wants to cover. She's, getting ready for books and such that's coming. She wants to cover, and she wants you to participate in a cover up. She's not even respecting the integrity with which you came to the organization with. You came with integrity, you
Right.
operated with integrity, and now we want you to lie. And
Right.
and that became the reason that you could not any longer continue your work there. On top of it all, rather than respect the difficult journey, personal journey that you had been through, now your future work seems to be affected.
Right.
And I'd love Arnold Torres or someone to defend, because they're watching. If you didn't say anything bad, you obviously had 2 interviews, and you should have had a freaking glowing report from Daystar for who you are, for what you did. But that didn't happen. So your future life begins to be affected. So you decide that you have got to take Daystar to task for what has happened. You are then painted as someone who has blackmailed you and the other 3 ladies. Was it who were the 3 people?
Jennifer Falcon and Karen Thompson.
Yes. And so you all get painted into a horrible place publicly on one of the most popular TV shows at the time, the Dr. Phil show. What housewife isn't sitting there? They watch Daystar in the morning, and then they pick up on Dr. Phil in the afternoon. And your good name, your righteous reputation, now smeared. Am I painting the right picture?
And Good Morning America with Robin Roberts, who, I mean, again, Morning America is like the top morning show. So yes, it was devastating to know, and quite frankly, even talking about what had happened, I would never, keeping anything secret, let alone for a Christian network, is crazy, because even in the secular realm, had a celebrity, a local celebrity, or somebody if they had done something that was a little tainted or was going to affect their image, I wouldn't have even advised them to keep a secret. Most public relations people would tell them that the very best thing to do is to come out, just tell the truth and apologize and be repentant for it. And you will be so much more respected just in telling the truth and apologizing for your actions and being repentant behind it, and the reasons, what you're gonna do to move forward to make it right. That's what I would have recommended. And so to be forced to kept quiet for any network or that I don't think any professional would do that, let alone a Christian network.
Yes, yes. And so as I understand it, what came out from the lawsuit, I think that basically there was just a deal struck. And it wasn't that, was Daystar, it was the judge that made the ruling that the parties just aren't going to talk about this. I'm not sure if he made that ruling because he felt it was such a public thing, or if Daystar was pushing for that.
Right. And I do want to mention that it's been made clear that I believe, my attorneys and I believe that has also been violated, on that disposition has been violated by the other side. Exactly, including by Daystar attorneys, and so yes, and that's disconcerting as well to hear.
It is disconcerting, and the fact is in this day and age is your story is old. It's old news to us, but not really to you. To you, this is still very personal. But when we can see all the records, when we can see what happened, and I just have to celebrate these 2 as well, Barry and Pete, okay? And Barry Bowen, and they are with this incredible organization, Trinity Foundation. I love these guys. So if we can, let me show this, JT. Trinity Foundation, Barry and Pete, they go about looking into who's doing what and who's, being honorable, all right? And they've had an awful lot to say about Daystar, okay? All the homes, all the money. And one interesting thing I want to say right now too is that they're looking into getting donations back. For instance, one of the donors to Daystar has written me saying that they were at first told that they couldn't get their donations back, and then they got $2,000 back by just being a royal pain. And so, interestingly, you've heard Marcus talk about donations getting returned.
Yes. And I hope people can find, you have an amazing group of followers, but I hope people can find, there's an episode that Marcus said that if people were ever unhappy or even going through a hard time, that they could always call Daystar and get refunded for their donations. So to hear that anyone is being turned away completely goes against Marcus's wishes and what has been said on air to viewers. So I hope they are able to find that.
Well, people have been disappointed, and they have gone to Daystar in epic proportions asking for their money back, because nobody thought that money being donated to Daystar was going to the things they're finding out has been, being enhanced, Joni's lifestyle and whatnot. And, it's interesting that when she finally gets just a huge pay raise, and she's making, I believe that they've reported on this, and same with Julie Royce. Thank God for the Roy's report that talks about all of this. Everyone needs to follow Julie Roy's, the Roy's report, what is being disclosed about her recent, she gets an enlarged paycheck at the same time she's destroying the company. I mean, literally with her own hands, single-handedly, with the dumbest moves of all time.
Right.
The cover-up of the essay, having an alleged predator who is under investigation currently, hosting the shows every day. This is the guy that sat with the NRB this last, just a week or so ago. This is the same guy sat at the NRB with Troy A. Miller after we were lied about by Daystar to get us removed from the NRB. Anyways, more on that. That's coming. But it's going to be fun. But NRB is sitting there, with the alleged predator. But even worse, we've got Daystar just in their own, must be in your own world to think that this is okay, because people are incensed. And so this is what's happening with all of this destruction. So you've got people like Barry and Pete who go about looking, for what's actually going on. So profiting from death, Daystar squawks church but waddles business. And this goes back into some of the things that have gone on, and some of the exposure into Daystar. Some interesting things were said, and of course they go after people that have like life insurance policies and get it turned over to them. But Barry and Pete are just brilliant. So what they've been able to do is they've been able to go into and I'll share this, intervener's response to defendant Daystar's verified motion to seal court records. And somehow, there's another one here. Let me get to that. Oh, I think that what I did was I pulled up. They were able to get unsealed. So they go to court and they get unsealed some of the documents. So some of the documents that are unsealed in this article that I just showed you, Barry and Pete petitioned the court to listen, this is public record. Let's see what's going on. And so they were able to get the income compensation for Marcus and Joni Lamb, which is, 2002, not a pretty penny. Seems like they were working hard for the Lord in those years. But, it just goes up and up and up. And so they, and so by 2011, they were making 132, or this was the housing allowance, 132,000 plus the income, of 152 and whatever. I think that when you have a large organization, you should be able to be compensated for your hard work, and there should be a reasonable, depending on the size. I personally don't have an issue with that, except when Daystar refuses to comply, actually, with, they can't even be at the NRB as one of the NRB, I don't know what they would call them, but, you know, that they would have sort of a partnership, or, you know, they'd be one of the NRB people. They can't, because they will not comply with the transparency of their income. And so they're disqualified. But the alleged pedophile does get to sit with Troy A. Miller, the CEO, at the fancy dinner on Friday night.
Well, and
Fascinating.
Laura-Lynn, if I could add, many times the ministries that have their heads of the ministries making millions of dollars are usually, the employees usually are the one who get the bad end of the stick, because we're often told, you know, this is a ministry, we can't afford to pay that much, but yet you're making millions of dollars, have more than one home. I mean, even the recording of Joni talking about, you know, getting the $100,000 and how flippantly that's just like, okay, he paid for the wedding. I don't know about
from
you, but
Rodney Howard
$100,000
Brown,
is, yes, that's a lot of money to
who was
most
totally
people.
against, and she's in his face about that, you know, because he was totally against this marriage and said that it was going to bring disaster. In fact, he could not sleep one night for the angst in his soul about what Joni was doing. And
Right.
again, disregard completely for Rodney
but
Howard Brown.
even
In
the
his face, you gave me $100,000. I paid for the honeymoon
right.
with that.
And $100,000 is a lot of money.
Mm.
So to be able to throw those numbers around and just have it be like, oh, okay, you know, like casual, like, okay, so that he paid for this, thanks. I mean, that in itself, I'm glad you brought the Trinity Foundation up, because
Yes.
I did want to say that, you know, people that are pulling their money out of Daystar, if that's what they choose to do, or they're looking for a place, because Marcus often said too, you know, donate to your local churches first. I think so many of the smaller churches of today are, they're just disappearing because they just don't
Yes.
have the support. So I think people really, really should be looking at putting their money in more watchdog groups like the Trinity Foundation, or the YouTubers that are speaking out, because the reason we're in this is, and the reason I hope that people are believers, because they love Jesus and they want to get his word out and save souls. And I will tell you that the reasons why these people are out there exposing churches is because we want, you know, we want there to be truth and love and righteousness in the church. And when that doesn't happen, people should be really scared. I tell my family this all the time. I always wondered, you know, how the Antichrist would pull the wool over so many people's eyes, because it just, you know, when you're around believers in Christ, you're just like, no, they know the word and they stand behind righteous truth. So it's a scary thing, but now having experienced this, it's easy for me to see how that will happen one day, because the word from ministers is taken with way too much weight, and it shouldn't. People shouldn't be afraid to challenge the heads, and they should be putting their money where they believe it will go to the most change in the church. And I think that what you guys are doing right now is really a huge justice, and getting the word out there for people who should not be, or need to make changes, should not be practicing the word of God, or you know.
100%. You know what people are sick of is the new multi-level marketing ministry scheme that
Exactly.
is suddenly just everywhere. You know, get more
Exactly.
programs, get people involved in this and that. You have to pay so much money in order to get the prophetic training. You know,
Right.
sign up today. You know, $500. You know, and so and what they've done is they have showed some of the background. You know, now apparently Marcus did at one point say that this was a $1 billion organization, and I think that is what was very attractive, by the way, to Dr. Doug Weiss. So attractive that Green Eyes was left in the wind, going on a sailboat somewhere else, and he got to, you know, look at all of this. And so they've exposed this, and you know, Trinity fi.org is where you can go and find what Trinity is exposing. And to your point, which is an excellent one, Jeanette, is that people are getting sick and tired of putting their hard-earned money into these places that are full of this deception,
Right.
of this fraud, of the lies, the complete and utter fake religion. And
Right.
where is God? Where is God with what happened to you? And I don't want to miss, because boy, have we ever been having fun. I see that our interview is very long, and I love
Oh,
it. It's going to be epic. The thing is that at the end of all of this, it's fair to say that no settlements. You were never paid money,
right.
and you all agreed that you walked away from each other. And so I think I'm stating that right. I know that Marcus and Joni wanted people to be in fear of ever coming against Daystar as as an employee, and you were used as basically examples that you don't dare come against us.
Right.
After that, and this is probably getting into sort of my final, I want to share one of the most egregious things that happened to you. It was so disturbing to me, and it doesn't violate any of this nonsense about the past, because it was after, or maybe in between. You tell me the time frame that it was, but it didn't concern this. But you had gotten another job, and Joni Lamb saw you, and she said some things to you. And I want everyone to just put everything you're doing down for a moment and listen to the cruelty and what happened. Can you tell us that story?
Yeah, so I was working at a retail store. I had to pay the bills, so I had to just take whatever I could. And I was working behind a cosmetics counter, which is right there in the front of the store and open to the public. So anybody, we're usually the first thing people see. And Joni and her mother come in and walk by, and I knew as soon as I saw them that no good was going to come from it. There was a reason why they were there. And as they walk by, they're snickering, and I hear one of them say, "She went from working at Daystar as a director of marketing to this," and they just, keep walking and giggle. And they went upstairs where one of the other ladies was working, and I knew that they were there to do the same thing. But it wasn't just them; they would send other people in. To the store, and it was done as a form of humiliation. And I know that that's one of the things that that is done often. I mean, we heard Susie even talk about how her parents were humiliated and put outside. Their office was taken from them, and also I know for the girls, you know, and Jonathan as well. Their offices are taken from them. They're put in a hallway for everybody to see. So humiliation is a big part of what they do. And I just think it's sad because you don't even expect that from the secular realm. They don't behave that way. And to experience it from a Christian organization was really, really the most heartbreaking and disappointing. To know the lengths to which they would go to make a person feel bad about themselves. So yeah.
So, a woman who was actually helped, you did the honorable thing by exposing something very serious, an affair that was going on behind a particular woman's back.
Right.
This woman is Joni Lamb. Her thanks, or her perception of that, was not only to just, hey, you know what, like, let's just part and be nice to one another the rest of your lives. Thank you for what you did for me. Marcus and I restored our marriage. The nastiness of what then happens is the walking past. And did you say with Joni's mother?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So it's like a family of nastiness to walk past the person who was the righteous one, who wanted to do the right thing at every turn just to have the right thing done is now mocked because you don't have a job anymore when you had to give up everything for righteousness. And Joni Lamb and her mom think it's okay to just belittle you, to bully you, to mock you. I don't have words for that.
Yes. And it's not unique to me, as I understand it. It's happened to other past employees, and I just think that's sad that that they would feel the need to do that to people.
So Jeanette, just for the record, are you a blackmailer?
No, no, not at all. It's something that I would never even have imagined would be said about me. And I knew as soon as it was because of all the turmoil that I went through, I knew as soon as it was said about Jonathan, okay, it's a tactic. I've heard this before, and it's done specifically to get people to question the other side, because if attention can be pulled from the real action that's being called out and have doubts put in people's minds that the person speaking these truths are bad people, then they're left questioning. So yeah, it's something that's said a lot, and people can be assured that if it's said, there's a reason for that being said. It's a PR and legal tactic that's used.
Well, it's really profoundly unacceptable, Christian or not, especially Christian. This mean and nasty spirit that has really epically come against Jonathan and Susie, actually, to have been so angry that they would not cooperate with her own life, that what they had to say was just so uncomfortable for her that she has turned against them and made them, putting out letters to their broadcasters that he's just smearing them. And it's not smearing, it's he's having to speak the truth like you out loud because the lies are being told, because there's no truth within them. I just want to thank you, Jeanette. I want to say that you are one of the kindest, loveliest people that I've ever met. And from the moment that I sensed your spirit and your heart for the Lord, your deep love for God, I knew that you were actually, although it seems terrible, you were hand chosen to go through something very difficult that has really brought you to the end of yourself and back. You're doing better. You're doing well. And the Lord has a great life ahead for you.
Yes.
Can you see that and feel that now?
Yes, absolutely. I am actually in trauma therapy because of, some other things that have happened as well. Daystar was just kind of the icing on the cake. But even in speaking to my trauma therapist, seeing how far I've come and being a part of the women's conference, and just talking to you guys and seeing other people that have suffered through this, I didn't see it that way, and now I am. I'm seeing that the Lord brought me out of this. He took me through it and brought me out of it, because even if I could help one person, it was all worth it. So many people are experiencing this and have kept it quiet for so long. I've talked to people who've had anger built inside them for over 50 years, and they've not been able to, they walked away from Christianity completely, or they just don't have the relationship with the Lord that they used to. It's worth it. And I think it's definitely something that has been long needed. to be able to minister to hurting people who
I'm
left the church.
hoping you're on a lot of stages. I'm hoping I see you at a lot of conferences. I'm hoping that the Jeanette that God created to be an overcomer and a truth teller and a righteous woman, I think that we can just kind of put that Daystar saga, but behind you, but to understand what God has taught you through this and to teach others. If anyone out there is doing a women's event, I think Jeanette would make a very fine keynote speaker, let me tell you. And you are so well spoken, and you're very precious. I thank you for this. And do you feel like have we covered everything that has been helpful to you and brought clarity to your story?
Yes, and again, thank you so much for what you do and for giving me the opportunity to set the record straight and get my truth out there, because I prayed for this for so long, and my family has prayed for this for so long. And thank you, Jesus, for letting me do this. And I hope you keep doing what you do for a long time, Laura-Lynn. And I pray that the Lord will bless you tenfold, because it is desperately needed out there today.
Me and you, we're going to be around for a long time, Jeanette. I thank God for you. Have a wonderful evening, and thank you for your courage, for your beautiful story. Thank you.
Thanks. You too.
Wow. I gotta say, that was incredible. And isn't she so lovely? That song, Isn't She Lovely? That was written for her. She is so very lovely. My website is Laura-Lynn.tv. If you like the truth that we tell, and if you like that we pursue it to the nth degree, and we stand strong, and we say it like it is, and we don't, flirt around the issues, we actually tackle them head on. If you appreciate that, my website, Laura-Lynn.tv, there's a little button that you can push, which I actually don't see there right now, JT, but that's okay. When you go there, you'll see it. It's a yellow button. And if you can, if you'd like to support us, you can become a monthly partner. That certainly helps, because, we can kind of, not be month to month on things. We can know that you're there. But I just appreciate the loyal and faithful, wonderful supporters that have already come alongside of us. We love you. We do know you by name, and we appreciate you. You can do a one-time donation. You can even do it anonymously at that button. When you go to my website, you'll see it there. You can call us 1-800-437-4356, and Nina, the lovely Nina, will help you to make a donation, even on PayPal. I think you can do that from the website from Europe or wherever. Some of y'all you're watching us around the world. And by the way, if anyone's in Australia and knows anything about Planet Shakers, or anything about stories regarding the past things, we've had a couple of interesting people reach out, so we are hoping that maybe you'd be one of them. But if you'd like to send us snail mail, there's the address, P.O. Box 1065, Vedder Crossing, Chilliwack, BC. And if you need some ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine, you might think that that's hard to find, but it's not. You just get in touch with Mia at SozoHealth at proton.me. Give her a contact. Also, if silver and gold. So I had a conversation that's very alarming to me for Canadians, and that was yesterday with our silver and gold guy. Apparently, there is rumors in the midst that with everything going on with this tariff stuff, I also had an awesome call from one of our political leaders in the land. He was a, well, I'm not going to give it away. Very high up. Y'all know his name. So I got to talk to him, and he also shared the same concern. When I get two people talking to me about finances and our economy, that gets me a little bit concerned. I kind of start feeling like God's giving an idea that, protect your finances. Get it into silver and gold. Contact Steve at Sovereignize at proton.me. How does it go? protonmail.com, steve@sovereignize@protonmail.com. And if you have some funds, get it into silver and gold where it can be kept, the value. Because what someone was telling me yesterday is that there are some predictions that the Canadian dollar is going to drop even worse compared to the American. I mean, they're not in great shape either. There's a lot of stuff that, Donald Trump is fixing, thank God. But it's just so, like for Canada, get a hold of Steve. You have some funds, put it into something valuable. The silver and the gold are the Lord's. That he created this valuable entity, so it doesn't take much to just make a call, transfer into something that you have in your hands that's not going to be downgraded on a certain day by 5 or 10 more cents on the dollar. See, once you have it there, it's safe, and silver and gold will retain their value and go up. Silver has been kept low for decades, really. And Steve, I love talking to him because he has this way of just talking about how, it's going to be unleashed. Silver is going to be unleashed. It has so many uses. It's actually more usable than gold. And predicting the day when they will actually be more par, when in fact, you can get a silver coin right now for very little. So look into all of it. I want to leave you with a scripture today. Well, the Lord Jesus had an incredible prayer. Jesus prays to be glorified, it says in John 17. And it's a fascinating prayer. If Jesus prays, do you think it might be important? What would Jesus say if he was praying? Well, he said this in verse 9, I pray for them. I am not praying for the world, but for those you have given me, for they are yours. Wow. The Word of God says that Jesus stands as an advocate between us and the Father, and that he is our great advocate. We don't need to go to someone to confess our sins. We can just tell the Holy Spirit, and we can just allow Jesus to stand as an advocate for us. And he says, for those you have given me, for they are yours. Can I just stop and say, I'm so glad whose I am today. I'm so glad that I belong to him, that he has made a way for me to be adopted into the family of God, so that God cares so intimately for me that Jesus even prayed a prayer that to this day matters to all of us. Listen to this. All I have is yours, Jesus is saying to the Father, and all you have is mine. And glory has come to me through them. I will remain in the world no longer. He's getting ready to leave. But listen to this. But they are still in the world. His disciples, and many to come after them. We're here. We're kind of stuck, everybody. We can't get out of this mess until he says so. But here's what Jesus says about the protection that we have as we are stuck in this world where we do not belong. We belong to him. Holy Father, protect them by the power of your name, the name that you gave me, so that they may be one as we are one. While I was with them, I protected them, and I kept them safe by the name that you gave me. None has been lost except for the one doomed to destruction, so that scripture would be fulfilled. And he was talking about Judas Iscariot. He was talking about his disciples none were lost. This is how dearly Jesus loved his disciples. He protected them. I am coming to you now, but I say these things while I am still in the world, so that they may have the full measure of my joy with them. I have given them your word, and the world has hated them, for they are not of this world any more than I am of this world. And to this very day, that remains true. We are hated for our beliefs, our stands. The enemy of our souls, the devil himself, wants to take us out to destroy our destiny, to destroy my destiny, your destiny, the destiny of Jeanette Hawkins. And God has given a promise that his protection is for eternity, that he has a plan and a purpose. He has a season and a time wherein his justice will come about. My prayer is not that you take them out of the world, unfortunately, but that you protect them from the evil one. They are not of the world, even as I am not of it. Sanctify them by the truth. Your word is truth. As you sent me into the world, I have sent them into the world. For them, I sanctify myself, that they too may be truly sanctified. Do you know why me and you and Jeanette Hawkins get to live, breathe, speak, and be? Is because God has sent us to be protected and to do His work, being sanctified by Him. Wow. Don't lose your voice, everyone. Thanks for being with us. Take care. God bless. You know, it's not easy to deliver the truth of what our sick world is doing, but for some of us, we feel that we have no choice. Because if we are silent about these abominable things, then we are letting evil go unchecked, and we cannot do that. For those of you wonderful people who are writing me and are sharing your encouragement, I am deeply grateful. Thank you for all the letters that you've been sending. Thank you for the donations and the support. I found out that in order to speak the truth, you have to become very, very strong. If you would go to my website at www.laura-lynn.tv, you'll find all of the ways that you can contact me. Remember, my friends, all is well. All is well. Thanks for joining me.